And it was a learning experience for me. Highway 280 was being built through the city, and we had all of our hearings up at the City Hall, and it was almost like a war between the west and the east part of town.
There was a concern about people losing their homes, businesses being lost, all those issues that I'm sure were difficult for the city council.
We had our meetings Monday nights. Well, this was just after a football game from the 49ers, that Sunday that we had lost the game. And this farmer came up, and he was very broken English, Italian, and he said, "Mr. St. Clara," he said, you legislate here like you played the football yesterday." And I can't use the exact word, but the SH. And I hit the gavel. Okay, bailiff, get him out of here. Boom, bang. And once 280, we put 280 through, then the whole community flourished. Businesses started moving in. The Westlake Shopping Center was a big asset to the community, and everything flourished.
A much-needed hospital, Mary's Help, moved to Daly City and was built at the peak of an 11-acre parcel. Renamed Seton Medical Center, this 11-story, 270-bed hospital provided necessary health care services and employment opportunities. From 1961 to 1967, Daly City grew in population from 43,000 to 63,000. This continuous growth expanded Daly City's municipal government so much, it outgrew its building. The City Council decided that a new civic center would be developed at the geographical center of the city. On May 20th, 1967, a crowd of over 1,000 gathered for the dedication of the new building. Home building had continued to be widely recognized as one of Daly City's main industries. New neighborhoods were annexed into Daly City, such as the Bay Shore, and developments were already underway by the Zeta Corporation at St. Francis Heights and by Carl and Fred Gellert in Southern Hills. In 1963, the Gellert brothers purchased the Kristen Ranch, totaling 950 acres, and formalized plans for one of the largest construction jobs in Northern California, Serramonte.
The Serramonte development was somewhat similar to Westlake in that it was undertaken as almost a complete city in and of itself. There were, again, school sites picked out, fire department, libraries, parks. All this was thought of in advance. Fred and Carl Gellert were experts from their pursuits in San Francisco and applied their same knowledge that they'd gained there in building in Daly City as well.
We tried to give the home buyer a good value, a good basic home. We tried to make the homes look a little different in the front, on the front elevation, to change the roof angles or maybe the windows or some of the trim boards, but the basic homes would be about the same.
In the Serramonte area, Fred and Carl Gellert planned for a large shopping center to anchor that community, which ended up being the Serramonte Shopping Center.
We considered having an open mall or a closed mall. Because of Daly City's notorious weather, we decided it was best to have an enclosed mall there, that it would just be more comfortable throughout the whole year. When we dedicated the site for the shopping center, we did a little fanfare on that. There was a salvage operation that we employed to tear down all the old dairy buildings. And they had a World War II tank. They came roaring down this little incline and just plowed into the cow barns. It was rather dynamic to see this World War II tank kind of chewing everything up. Then later we had a formal party with all the dignitaries and speeches and catered food in around the center court of the mall when the center was opened.
We're gonna get freedom now. Down now. 1, 2. Down now. 3, 4. Bring it down. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
At the height of the civil rights movement, the themes of equality, democracy, and freedom were at the center of the national political debate. While Daly City had now transformed from a small suburb into the largest city in the county, discrimination and unfair housing practices made it difficult for non-Caucasians to purchase their own home.
Part of what was going on in the post-war period was this concept of the suburbs was seen as relief from all that was bad and dangerous about living in cities. And one of the things that was key to that at the time was the perception that you could have this sort of lily-white community where all of the people of color were not allowed to live. And essentially, that was standard practice in the post-war period for builders to have built into their CC&Rs or their covenants these requirements that would allow only white people to buy the homes.
We saw an advertisement for Southern Hills Sunstream Building Company, and so we decided they should come up here, and we went to look at the model homes. Well, we really liked it. It was very nice. But I had a sense that the salesmen there were kind of offish. And he talked to us, he says, you're not going to get a home over here. And he explained why. And he says, well, we're not allowed to sell homes to non-Caucasians. Well, I said, well, that's because my husband's Filipino. And he said, yes. So he said, but there is a gentleman that is desperate to sell his house. He owned the house outright, so he could sell it to anybody he felt like. And so he sold us the house for what he paid for it, which was $25,000.
Even Willie Mays, who was a local hero, had trouble buying a home in a subdivision somewhere in the Bay Area when he was here in the 50s and 60s. At the time, even someone as beloved as Willie Mays couldn't buy a house because he was black.
To me personally, I grew up in a little more of a liberal time, and I was delighted to see the barriers slowly be dropped, and then we were able to put in our ads non-discriminatory housing, and I think it was real progress that we could get away from the racial prejudices that existed.
The country would also experience social reforms by abolishing the national origins formula that existed in the United States, replacing it with a preference system that focused on immigrant skills and family relationships with citizens or United States residents. The Immigration and Nationality Act, which was signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson in 1965, would have a lasting effect on Daly City. Immigrants from Latin America and Asia, especially the Philippines, would become the new faces of Daly City.
I came here to America in November 1968, a few days before Thanksgiving. My port of entry was San Francisco, a beautiful city. I was alone coming here, but then I have 3 friends who were here ahead of me, plus my sister was ahead 2 months before. We stayed with a couple, the aunt and uncle of my friend, and they rented a house with 6 rooms in Mission Dolores in 16th Street. Beautiful area. That was exciting. Everything was exciting for me. I was so happy to be free and independent, away from my parents, sad to say. During 1968, there were few young Filipinos yet. So when we have parties, we go to a friend's house, and everybody, in Manila were there, so it's a nice gathering. And one of them is my husband. I met my husband when I came here. And after I got married, I moved to Westlake, Daly City, and got an apartment. In 1973, the homes were being built in the Serramonte area. So we were looking for houses, and we decided to get this house close to King Drive and Bellard. And that was our first home. Everybody who comes to America has a goal for that American dream, to purchase your house. Our American dream was fulfilled, and we were really very excited. When we first moved to Daly City, majority is Caucasian, and a few Asian people. As the years go by in the 80s, more Asians are coming in and more Filipinos are coming in. And in the 90s, I think that's the start of seeing more Filipinos I've never seen, because the businesses came to Daly City also. Filipino restaurants were opening, Filipino groceries were opening, and Asian groceries were opening. And Filipino groups are making their own organizations. In 1993, there was an opportunity for one of us to be a representative of our community.
A young attorney, Michael Gingona, has made Daly City history.
The community was excited because we need somebody to speak for us.
What we've gained now is a voice in City Council, someone that has a unique perspective, someone that has that background.
By having Mr. Gingona in the council, we have somebody that we can tell all our problems and to help us in the community. We have to voice out whatever we want to. If you are disillusioned or you don't like this or something happens, you have to speak up. This is our country now. This is our people now.
As Daly City was experiencing a dramatic shift in demographics during the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, parts of the city were aging and deemed redevelopment areas. Select neighborhoods were earmarked for revitalization and renewal efforts. There was also a push to connect Daly City to mass transit, linking the community to the greater Bay Area. But not unlike the debates over Highway 280, the arrival of the Bay Area Rapid Transit System, or BART, in 1971 revealed differing and competing visions of growth and land use among its citizens. For proponents, the advent of BART to Daly City was a critical next step in the evolution of a growing suburb. Opponents feared it would lead to intrusive high-rise development that would alter the valued character of the community. The intersection of Junipero Serra Boulevard and John Daly Boulevard was also at the center of debate, as transportation and business development were key goals of the city, but at a cost to some residents. A coalition of ethnic and cultural groups known as the original Daly City Protective Association was formed in 1972 to oppose the removal of homes surrounding the new BART station, then under construction, and to advocate for limiting redevelopment.
It was difficult for the BART station to be built in Daly City because much, if not all, of that land was in the hands of private individuals. There were homes that were already built there that had been there in some cases for almost 100 years. So it was a very sensitive subject when the government had to basically come in and say, look, we're taking this area over and we're building a project here that's going to serve the area. They were made offers on their homes to relocate. I actually knew one of the people whose job it was to try to negotiate with people, how much money they wanted to leave, essentially. There were a few people who didn't want to leave. They just insisted that, I should be able to stay here.
I remember very vividly when BART came in, and they literally took out 2 blocks so that they could extend John Daly Boulevard down into Westlake. And that was really kind of a sad moment, because here you had all of these folks who lived here for years and years, who worked here, and now suddenly they were being told, we're going to buy your house and you're going to have to move because we're going to literally take that out. I think that was a real turning point for me in seeing that this sense of Daly City as a little pearl was suddenly being broken.
The dedication of the station at that time, there was even people from our city parading around demonstrating against it. We didn't have any transportation in this county. Every city had their own little transportation, or a group of buses or vans running around trying to provide the transportation, but there was nothing unified on it, nothing at all. And then in 1974, it got on a ballot to do the Samtrans, and so it passed, and then Samtrans was established.
Samtrans would extend bus service throughout Daly City, and BART became a high-profile transit amenity for a modern suburb. BART would eventually link Daly City to San Francisco International Airport and its new international terminal, servicing the Pacific Rim. further solidifying the city's emergence as a western outpost for immigrants from Asia.
I, William Jefferson Clinton, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
The 90s were a great time because the economy was doing better. Bill Clinton had already been in office for a little while. So it was an important time for everybody to be involved in the political process. I was sworn in December 1996, a very prideful moment for all Latinos in Daly City, but more importantly for the whole county of San Mateo. It was very rare at that time to have a Latino elected to a city, especially a city this large. Those of us who had just got on the city council looked at the city as a whole and realized there's a lot of Daly City that hasn't been looked after for a number of years, for whatever reason. And it was our task then to not only try to help that, but try to fix it.
There you go. All right.
We had decided to do what we affectionately call the facelift of Daly City in creating new infrastructure, rebuilding some old buildings, refurbishing other ones, and creating a new Daly City, if you will.
As the city continued to modernize, debates would ensue about the scale of developments along the Junipero-Serra Boulevard and Mission Street corridors, as redevelopment funds were utilized in facilitating major construction projects that would have a lasting community impact.
Pacific Plaza really was the start of our economic prosperity here in terms of planning for the future. We had to plan for the future because as good as the 90s were, we knew it couldn't last. If you look at geographically from a bird's eye view of Daly City, this is right in the middle of town. And it made practical sense to put something of this magnitude, of this importance right where it is. But as with every development, there's going to be pluses and minuses. There's going to be people for or against it. And we had our share of people who were against it. But I think that was really speaking more to where Daly's history was in terms of what Daly City was supposed to be. And we were bringing such a large-scale development that it caused a lot of people to take a step back and say, is this really what we want in this town?
Welcome, enjoy the show, and enjoy the beautiful new Century 20 in Daly City.
And it was the kind of excitement that we sort of emulated throughout Daly City thereafter. There were a couple of other openings we had for other ribbon cuttings at the time. Whenever we opened up a new business, there was always an opportunity to get people out and cut ribbons and enjoy the progress we were making in Daly City. That's one of the proudest moments we had and that I had on this council, was bringing such a large-scale project to a city like Daly City and making it successful.
The trade centers here in New York have been hit by airplanes. And there's, you can see, perhaps the second tower, the front tower, the top portion of which is collapsing.
Powerful airstrikes today led U.S. troops to their first major victories of this war, pushing through Iraqi defenses in 2 places, closing in on Baghdad.
My fellow citizens, I stand here today humbled by the task before us, grateful for the trust you've bestowed, mindful of the sacrifices borne by our ancestors.
By the close of the millennium's first decade, Daly City, as with the rest of the country, had to overcome many challenges in order to maintain the quality of service expected from its residents. In 2011, Daly City celebrated its centennial, as the city's rich history was on display throughout the year. Daly City today is a full-service, thriving, diverse community with over 100,000 residents. With spectacular views of the Pacific Ocean, San Francisco Bay, and some of the most picturesque golf courses in the country, Daly City provides a wide variety of recreational activities for citizens of all ages. Daly City offers quality, affordable homes, places of worship for many denominations, a solid school system, modern libraries, and is one of the safest cities in the county. With its central location, diversified economy, excellent transportation links, and a productive labor force, the future for economic growth is bright. The reasons for settling in Daly City that Robert Thornton, John Daly, and other early residents might have had are probably different from the reasons of latter-day arrivals. But by and large, there is a sense of great pride and satisfaction in Daly City, reflected by those who live here.
Daly City today, it's much different in terms of the demographics and the ethnicities of this community. But when you think about the transitions and still the same goals through the years, there's always been this goal, I think, of people that come into Daly City to make it a community, to make it their homes, and to make it a successful and great place for people to live.
We took part in the 50th, and we took part in the 75th, but the 100th is quite a deal. And so we're very proud to be living here.
I love Daly City. It's a safe place. It's a beautiful place. It's a city, but it's a little hometown feeling of caring. That people in Daly City care about one another.
This is just a wonderful experience for me personally. I'm able to re-celebrate now the centennial, the 100 years, my God. And I cherish every moment of my experience here in Daly City.
I miss seeing the beautiful